think we could officially start. After all of that. Yeah. Russell, thank you for doing this, brother.
Yes,
I was very excited to do this for a long time. I was waiting for this.
Yeah.
So, I'm very grateful that you do the time.
And I'm grateful for your time as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So first of all, I mean, you said the elephant in the room, right?
The elephant in the brain. Oh, yeah.
Oh, the elephant in the brain.
Yeah.
Wait, what? I thought it's called the elephant in the room for some reason. So the elephant in the brain refers to the elephant in the room, or no?
It's a play on words with that phrase, then that's the title of the book. Yeah.
Okay. So before we dive into that, the elephant in the room here is that you've probably in the last year, you kind of, I guess what you can call broke. Like you went a little, like you started doing bigger things, which is very exciting, and congratulations.
Thank you. I'm sure. Yeah, I appreciate that.
And one thing that is one of your more outstanding qualities, that you're very humble. You are. You don't like to talk too much about yourself and about what you do, especially when it doesn't really serve any real purpose. But to the extent that it serves the podcast, and maybe talk just a little bit, if you don't mind talking a little bit about that, and then we can move on to way more subjects that would basically twist our minds a little more.
Yeah, sure. So, like you said, in the last year or so, I've experienced some more success in my acting career. So I was lucky enough to book a role on Tyler Perry's The Oval, and it's a show that takes place in and around the White House, and I play the vice president. So it's a pretty good role to have in a show like that, and I'm very grateful. Tons of gratitude for having an opportunity like that. So just enjoyed that experience, and working with Tyler Perry has been just such a blessing and so amazing. It's a really cool experience, and the way that we produce the show is like nothing I've ever seen before. So it's awesome. Yeah.
He produces a lot. He produces what, a movie a day, right?
Something like that. Yeah. Like the amount of material that we're producing is about a movie's
it's
worth
about 365 movies a year plus shows.
Yeah, exactly. No, we do a lot out there, and he's got this amazing setup with like a full replica White House, which blew my mind the first time I saw it, and it definitely helps with the performance when you're in the actual space that you're supposed to be in. It definitely.
Do you ever get lost in that, like completely, like you for a moment you like believe you're vice president?
I wouldn't say I believe I'm vice president, but I will say that like there was one day where it kind of hit home when I was in the dressing room, which is like on the other side of the grounds there, and they're like, they had me get ready, and they're like, can we take Russell up to the White House? And I was like, wow, I didn't think I'd ever hear a sentence like that before. And you get in and you see that like on the exterior, it looks like the White House. You get dropped off, then you walk in, and the film crew is all there, and it's all the wires and camera and gear and all that stuff. So you're doing a movie, but you look around and it's like you go inside and the sets are all usable. You can look in every direction. If you go to like an Old West set, sometimes it's just the facade.
Wait, so it's the whole White House?
The whole White House. You go inside. There's
I thought
office.
It was just like wings and.
Yeah, no, like that was my thought. Like a Wild West set where you see the facade, and that's when they walk down, and then the outside, and then for all the interiors, sometimes they're shooting at studios and sound stages, right? This is interior, outerior. You can go from outside to inside, and you're in the White House. There's staircases. You go downstairs. There's all the offices and the press room. It's the whole deal, and so that definitely has a different effect, when it comes to performances and getting in there. So it's a trip.
I guess it makes perfect sense, because if you do lengthy scenes in which people are walking from one wing to the other or from one room to the other, you're not going to start rebuilding a whole new set all the time. That would actually make no sense.
Yeah, and also just, for different sets, you just move the camera down the way, and that's a new office, and it's appropriate for the thing. So you're just moving along and shooting in the different locations. You don't have to, pack everything up and go across town to a different set. So it makes it very efficient, and it's fun. Yeah.
So I'm ashamed to say I just don't watch anything, which is a big fault when you're in the industry to any extent. But what exactly is the show about? Like what is going on in the White House that is the main focus of the show?
It's about the sort of power struggles that go on behind the scenes. So, for example, I don't think I'm spoiling too much to say that the president in this world is not the best of people. And he's a bit of a tyrant, and so everyone's kind of vying to sort of take his job. And so as the vice president, that's also part of my motivation is trying to find a way to get him out of office. And of course that would be beneficial for me. So, there's all these kind of things. And then, there's relationships between different people, and there's, some cheating going on and some of that stuff. So there's a lot of fun things going on.
So if in the House of Cards, the angle was that the president was a psychopath, or the whip was a psychopath, which turned out to be not far from the truth. But what is the angle here? Like, what is the tone that the show takes?
It's in that same vein, but I would say even more so.
Oh, really?
More
like
conflict.
took it to the more extreme?
Yeah, more
really?
conflict, more drama, more sex things going on. It's crazy.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Now I might actually watch that one show. No, seriously. I'm actually excited about it now. Yeah. So now we got that off our shoulders. We can ask the question about the book, because you mentioned a book right before we entered.
Sure.
The Elephant in the Brain. Yeah. What is the book about?
So this one, I'm still getting through it, so I haven't finished it quite yet, so I can't tell you. No spoilers on this one.
Everybody dies at the end.
Yeah, everyone dies at the end.
All the elephants.
So it's basically looking at the way that. I'll put it this way. I'll steal the metaphor that they use that really hit home with me, and that is that a lot of times when we're dealing with consciousness and the way that we imagine we control ourselves, we conduct ourselves, that we feel like we are the captains or the president in this world, right? And what they're kind of looking at is changing that idea from us being in control consciously to what we think of as our consciousness and in control is really what they use in this metaphor as the press secretary. And so what happens is that we think we're in control of our behavior and we rationalize that through our consciousness, but what they sort of suggest happens, and which I find compelling, is that really what happens is that we behave in a way, and then our consciousness is always catching up and sort of justifying it in the way that a press secretary would say, well, this is what makes sense in a way that is socially acceptable. And so what we're constantly doing is rehearsing the way we would describe our behavior to somebody else in a way that they would find acceptable, and maybe in a way that isn't as selfish as we might actually be truly motivated. Or on some level, maybe it's like that's the true motivation, but also maybe just an additional motivation. There's always sort of multiple motivations going on, and our consciousness just kind of gravitates toward one sort of through thread, and we kind of just let the other motivations fall off to the side, but it doesn't mean that they weren't also active in our.
So essentially, we occupy one tiny channel out of this entire machinery that is actually doing all the actual choice making. Basically.
Exactly.
Do they go? Who wrote the book? Do you remember?
Oh, I'd have to look that up. I'm so bad at.
No, it's all good. I'll put a thing in the description probably. Yeah. But does the writer go as far as to kind of go into the nitty gritty of actual free will, like Sam Harris does in the book Free Will? Or do you know the premise that Sam Harris makes, basically, essentially, in a nutshell?
I haven't come across that book yet, but they do get into some of that, but it's because I feel like free will is more like a philosophical thing, and what they're talking about is more like discrete behavior things. So like, for example, they'll go through like the use of laughter, the use of language, the use of art, like more granular, I would say, than sort of like the broad idea of what free will is.
So actually, I would say that, well, at least in the way that Sam Harris made the case, it's more, and obviously the idea doesn't originate with him, but it's actually more, like, it's less general, it's more specific. So like all those things you described, they're a product of a choice that was made, that we call, we don't think of it as a choice, but like, you can say, I made the choice to laugh this way, even if it's a little involuntary or whatever it is. Right. But he goes as far as to say is that everything is this way. Yeah. So there's the difference between voluntary and involuntary action, only in the sense that you have a story that matches you wanting to do this thing in your own head versus a thing that just occurred that seems to be out of the gestalt of things that you were trying to appropriate in that moment, basically. Right. So that would be the thing. The reason I'm so interested in that is because I'm noticing more and more over the years that it's actually pretty easy to see if you really pay attention to how you do things, which is that all the decisions that you make throughout the day, they have this property, and in fact, that moment of making a choice, that actual moment that nobody really pays attention to, seems to be outside of everything that we want to deem as physical. So it's almost like not to reallocate it to some metaphysical realm or something, like something woo-woo, but
Yes,
just in the sense that there's no physical component. Even there's not even as far as your personal experience is concerned, there's not even a component of recognition of any kind that it can even potentially arise. Yeah. So specifically, I always give this example of like if you want to go to the store or you want to go to the gym, right? You have 30 minutes to decide. You go back and forth in your head. You have all those like reasons, right? You come up with a back and forth. Yeah. And then all of a sudden there's, 5 minutes. Okay, I have to make a choice. Right. And then something happens where all of a sudden you know that now you're either going to go to the store or you're going to go to the gym. Yep. But so what happened in that fork in the road, right? If you really pay close attention, it's equivalent to falling asleep and waking up really fast. Because when you fall asleep, you never remember falling asleep. You just remember waking up. Right. So you wake up, you never remember falling asleep for like a nanosecond. Yep. And in this new reality that you woke up into, all of a sudden you're either going to the gym or you're going to the store. And obviously it can split again, but in that moment, you're convinced that that's the action that is about to take place. Yep. But that moment, not only that you didn't make it, I would go as far as to say that even your subconscious didn't make it. Yeah. There's this thing that it seems to be eluding reality itself. It's the hole in the donut through reality itself. It's like, and the ultimate choice would be, why did reality choose to be and not to be, right? Yeah. It's like why did reality all of a sudden spark to like the thing? But what I wonder is that all those books, they're fascinating. Because you didn't finish it yet, because I guess you can't tell me the ending of it. Yeah, but do they take the more like pragmatic kind of like outlook at it? Like they're trying to like, what are they trying to say at the end of it? Just like, okay, here's the situation. What's the takeaway that they're trying to?
So I think the difference in their approach is that they're trying to find ways, and why I kind of separate it from the idea of free will, because free will seems like a more of a global look at decision making. They're trying to find ways to sort of dissect and getting into smaller sections of it. So they're getting at the same thing, and I feel like there's a lot of overlap between the two ideas. It's just how do you strip those down into smaller pieces that you can kind of consume a little bit easier. One of the things that they were talking about were people that have in the brain, there's the left brain, the right brain. There's the part that
corpus callosum.
Yeah, corpus callosumectomy, I think is the term.
When you separate the brain, right?
Separate the brain, right? And
for seizures, they do it, right, or something like that.
Yeah, for seizures or different
conditions.
Yeah,
right.
And so those are good ways to kind of attack this, to where you can see that the way that the consciousness sort of backfills and creates a justification for a decision making, like what you were talking about, where the decision comes out of nowhere, where you can talk to the different lobes of the brain separately. And if you are talking to the left side of the body, which is processed by the right side of the brain, and get it to do something, and then you ask them to tell you why, the language production comes out of the left side of the brain. So there's no communication between the two, but the left side of the brain will still come up with a reason for why they did that action.
It's the reason coming out.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I always actually remember which one is doing what, but I've heard this before. That basically one of them can't speak in words. It can only speak in symbols, right? So that there's only like it understands like symbolic representation. It understands much better. Right. But like actual spoken language, for example. I hope I'm getting this right, but see, we don't have a Jamie here. We have a legal expert. You have any experience in neuroscience as well?
Yes.
Okay, good.
No, actually, I do.
You do? So what are we saying is spot on, or
judges?
Well, sometimes the left and right side. It depends. You're generalizing, because sometimes people are the left and right side switch. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes.
Wait, sometimes they switch in their task, like the task actually switch?
Left-handed. Some people, like generally speaking, you're correct. But yeah, my degree at UCLA was a biopsychology.
Well, this is amazing. We're gonna have we have one more domain.
Another microphone.
Yes, we should probably actually do that for another podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
That would actually be exciting.
So like the example they gave in the book was like the title of this little section was "I wanted to get a Coke," and the story was that they had one of these subjects go up to get something, and it was their right brain that they knew that they had given the information to go up and do the thing. Like when they asked the person, well, why'd you go up and do this? Knowing that only the right side of the brain had the information for why they went up and did it, the left side wouldn't know that, but the left side is generating the language. So if they're going to answer the question, they have to do it through language. And so the person said, well, I wanted to get a Coke. There's like a piece of the story that I'm missing that would put all together, like what was the actual thing they were going to do. But the idea was that even though the brain didn't know why it was doing it, it instinctively and very quickly answered. And so this was sort of what gave them insight into the idea of how our consciousness and what we feel is like ourself and our free will and what we're deciding to do is kind of just a little bit behind all the time. And
it's always a confabulation of some sort.
Exactly.
It's always like they also did this experiment with the black on black. Did you ever see this? Huh. So they basically let people of the opposite sex to pick up like a person from two cards.
Yeah.
And so women picked guys and guys picked women. And the people were on purpose kind of like they weren't too attractive and they weren't too ugly, basically. So just kind of like somewhere in the middle.
Yep.
And then they would show you both cards. And then let's say you would pick this girl and they would put it down and give you this girl, right? But they used like a very cheap magician's trick called black on black, where the card was basically behind it was the opposite card. So they would give you the opposite choice.
Yeah.
And then they would ask you to explain why you chose that. But you're looking at the opposite face.
Right.
Without like 99% of people, I don't remember the percentage, so I'm probably bullshit, but it was a very high percentage of people that just started coming out with an answer. There's not actual recognition that because dealing with the fact that you were wrong seems to be way more painful and way more costly to the brain than actually pausing and saying, wait a second, that's not what I chose. So that it's just like, there's no point of doing that, essentially. Yeah. Which, by the way, probably casts a pretty serious light on everything we do in the social media sphere and in politics and everything else. It's like, it's just a bunch of kids running around just arguing with each other about a thing that they didn't actually decide. That's literally what's going on. Yeah. Which, by the way, you are actually somebody who before... I've noticed that now that you got on a couple of big shows, you started posting. You weren't posting anything on social media, like barely. Like once every 2 years, you would see a post. Is this something they made you do? This is something
no, it wasn't. If anybody made me do it, I would say my wife was like, you need to get on Instagram. You need to start posting stuff. And so I was like, okay, I'll start.
She's not wrong, but but it is a painful. Every time I have to post an episode. Yeah. As much as I love doing this and I love posting, the act of posting itself, ask Kelsey, like it destroys me. That day, I'm a wreck. Yeah. Like seriously, I can't like, I forget things all the time. I'm like, I get anxious. It's like, it's just the fact that I'm on it. Yeah. I'm not throwing dirt. Like, listen, social media is great for certain things, but it's just a fact that the days that I have to post drive me up the wall. Like I can't, like it's, it's all the hashtags and making sure that everybody doing the thing. It's like, it's Elon, hurry up with Neuralink. I need to be able to do work and do that at the same time. Yeah. So interesting. I wonder, I want to know actually what the conclusion of the book is when you finish reading it. Because I want to see if they're saying, so, maybe don't be so hard on yourself or whatever. I don't know. Usually there's like some kind of a bow that they tie around it. And I wonder what it is for this particular case.
Yeah, we'll do another podcast about
that. And we're definitely, because I made such an effort to make sure that the sound sounds good because I realized how much it actually matters. Yeah. But I'm serious. Like, we should do another one, and I will make sure we have another mic, and you should definitely join us, Daniel, because I think it will be a fascinating conversation about certain subject. I'm going to be educated here. The one thing we went back and forth just a tiny bit, like when we were talking about doing the podcast, was something you mentioned. So this is going to be out of left field, but it was just interesting to me, so we'll talk about it. Just complete break from the subject. You said that I posted something about Jordan Peterson saying something about Elon Musk, remember? And then you said that sometimes your spidey senses kind of tingle a little bit around Jordan Peterson. Yeah. And I'm sure there's like a whole, explanation here of like the exact quote, but I wanted to explore that a little bit because I think it's super interesting to see like what a different version certain people see of different people. Then in our case, it might actually not be that different, but it does, the gamut is pretty wide. So like, some people literally look at the same person and then just see something completely different, right?
Right.
But at the end, even though there is a very probably there's like a wave function in the middle where it's just like an array of possibilities, even of that person, right. But there's still some truth to the matter, right? There's some certain people leaning more towards being constructive and helping, and other people leaning a little bit more towards being destructive, and then goes all the way to the edges of, as far as we can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
What do you specifically see that made you say that? That like the
spidey sense part of it?
Yeah.
Well, I'll put it this way. I've gotten into a handful of exchanges with people online, so, take it with a grain of salt. But, I'll make a critique of something, of lots of different things that are on there, but specifically for Jordan Peterson, people get very emotional about him.
Oh, people around him. Not him specifically, but people who follow him.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And so I got accused once of hating Jordan Peterson. And I'm like, no, I'm not a fan of Jordan Peterson, but I'm also not a detractor of Jordan Peterson. I don't really have a lot of exposure to him. I'll come across a quote and I'll be like, oh, that's interesting. And it's Jordan Peterson. I like that. Yeah, that's cool. Easy. Move on. Come across something, I'm like, ooh, there's something there. And then it's not because it was Jordan Peterson. It was just, that was also from Jordan Peterson. I find that when he speaks, he has a passion to him that I think is very attractive. And I think that's what a lot of people respond to. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. I think that is also interesting for me. And he's also very eloquent and intelligent. And so when there's something that is kind of off about a statement that he makes that gets, promulgated throughout the internet because people really connect to it, that makes me just a little nervous. I'm like, well, wait a minute, there might be a different way to phrase this. And if I was in the room with him, I say, well, maybe you could say it like this or like that. Like, which one do you think would be better? I'm trying to remember specifically which quote you were referring to.
I think you mentioned it because the quote that I posted was just about Elon. He was just saying things about Elon. But the quote that you said, I believe it was, sometimes you have to be a monster or a demon or something like that.
Yeah. So I've heard it from him specifically, but then you hear a lot of people re-quoting it. I believe Joe Rogan re-quoted it. It was, you should be a monster. Like the world's paraphrasing, the world's telling you should be meek, you should be a pacifist, you shouldn't do anything. You should be a monster and then learn to control it. And while I understand what he's getting at, and I understand the idea of like developing the self and becoming the best version of yourself and the strongest version of yourself. And if you're strong, you can do good with that strength, you can do bad with that strength, and you can use monster kind of like the way we use it in, football. And it's like, oh, dude, that guy's like a monster, he's a beast, right? The reason why that kind of catches me is not because I disagree with the ultimate outcome. I think there's like an order thing, right? So if you say you should be a monster and then learn to control it, that makes me nervous because I'm like, well, no, you kind of have to at least learn both at the same time. But really, for me, it's you learn the discipline first, and it's through that discipline that you build the strength, right? So, for example, this is one of my favorite movie quotes, a tiny little quote in this great movie called Braveheart. And Uncle Argo, this is in the beginning of the movie, Uncle Argo comes up to the young kid who's just lost his family, and he's looking at the sword, and he goes, first, I'm going to do my terrible Scottish accent, first learn to use this, and he's pointing at his head. Then I'll teach you to use this and the sword, right? And so like the idea was like you have to have the ability to be responsible for the strength that you want to have ahead of time. And so either way, you get to the end and you have this strength under, I think, voluntary control is the phrase that Jordan Peterson uses, right? Either way you get to the end, it's just there's this section where like you get the strength before you know how to control it. That's where you get into this dangerous territory. And what worries me is that people that would fall into doing something bad in that spot are the people that might stop listening at, you should be a monster.
So they just, it's the convenient portion to do.
Right. And so now it's like, okay, I'm going to be a monster, but they never quite get to that other part of learn to control it, right?
I see.
And so it has less to do with the fact that he said it and more to do with the way the audience, who are already sort of passionately connected to him, might respond to it. So it's a weird critique, and that's why I said I was
No,
careful to
that's
say,
a valid critique, and
Yeah.
I hear you fully. So you're
Yeah.
essentially saying that because there's a certain way, even though that the idea is saying is very nuanced, some people don't necessarily play the nuanced game, and they just want to adopt whatever it suits them best. And hey, this statement actually came in the beginning of the sentence.
Right.
Why not just go with that? And then when I feel drunk on power, why not just stay there?
Right.
So I think that if I'm not mistaken, because I don't know if it was in which book it was that he explicitly said that, probably in most of them, but I think he's borrowing from Carl Jung, the idea of the shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference there is that it's not that you need to learn to be a monster, is that you need to recognize you already are one from the second that you're born. So now that's, can also be debatable. I would say that the way that I'm reading that quote is that he's alluding to the fact that a lot of people don't recognize what atrocities they would have been capable of if they would be placed in the right position, the right place, and the right time.
Right.
And because of that, they externalize it towards the other.
Yep.
And that's essentially taken to the extreme. That's how you have Nazi Germany, where you fully externalize the internal shadow and then you overlay it on something else.
Right.
But I fully hear you that maybe in the world that we live in today, there might be better formulations of language that would get at a more subtle recognition of that truth that don't involve such a radical statement in the beginning.
It's almost not even about the statement at that point, or like where I'm coming at.
Well,
it.
just in the
It's
sense
more
that
of like,
a lot of people might misunderstand it.
Right,
So
that's-
like there's a way to taper it off a little bit without the extreme of the words monster.
right. And I get picky.
It's not
with
that
words.
I don't think you're triggered by the word monster. I
No,
understand what
yeah,
you're saying.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's another one where he says, "A good man is not a harmless man. A good man." This is where the voluntary control part. A good man is. I'm at the paraphrase again.
I think it's a good man is one who's it can be very like can do a lot of damage but doesn't. Right. Something
But
like that.
So
yeah.
the way you put it, you've already added more nuance to it because you
Right.
said can be dangerous. He says a good man is a very dangerous man who has that under voluntary control. And I like that's another one where it's like a slight tweak because I get what you're saying.
yeah.
But also it's like, well, you have to kind of define what it means to be a good man at that point. And where I kind of separate a little bit from that is that to me sounds more like a civil man, right? Like you aren't harmless. You can do a lot of harm, but you don't do the harm. That makes you civil. That means you can, be around other people not doing harm and everyone's safe, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like the idea of being a good man is like actually doing something good, like positive, right? So if you go to the grocery store and you come home and you didn't beat up a whole bunch of people, under this categorization, that's a good man. You've done good. And I was like, well, no, that's just civil. Like if you go and you give like a piece of fruit to the homeless guy that's outside, then that's like a good man, right? And so
it's net, but like it's proactive.
Right,
There's
exactly.
there's like an extension of your condition outwards towards the world versus just capping whatever can hurt the world, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the reason why I make that distinction, because not having to say it's an argument with Jordan Peterson, but like if you were then to look at the audience and someone says, well, I can do all this harm to people and I'm not, so that makes me a good person. Yeah, that's I'll accept that. So it's like a very small thing that you're getting at. But what you can kind of twist it into say that like me making myself more dangerous is what qualifies me to being a good person instead of like doing the good thing or not hurting someone. It's like there's like a weird
But then his point, just to push back just a little bit,
Yeah.
the flip side of that is that I think, and this is, I mean, obviously I don't have a way to know, but it seems to me that Jordan is getting to it like that specifically,
Right.
is because if you do the good things out of a place of just you want to be liked or because you want to shake off any notion of you being capable of something bad or being a monster, then all the good you're doing still leads you to a very weak place because you're doing it to not for the right reasons, essentially. So if you got now that no, but I think it does matter in the evolution of what a mind goes through
Right.
when then the mind defines itself. So, for example, specifically with Jordan, which I think might actually explain also a little bit why his statements are sometimes seem to be so radical, and also his delivery.
Sure.
I think that. So I think that the making this like putting Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson like side by side might actually be very informative here. I think that I don't know if you know this or not, but Jordan is a really tortured person, like both psychologically and physically. He has a lot of like health issues, very severe ones.
I get that sense listening to him, but I'm not aware of it.
Yeah, so he has like very serious health conditions, and his family and his wife was like basically had I think it was cancer, or like she was on the threat of death for quite a while, and he got like really depressed, and he actually had to go to rehab for the pills he was taking. But that was going on his whole life. So he has this autoimmune that prevents him from being able to do a lot of things, and sometimes it would be as bad as he wouldn't be able to even leave bed by 5 p.m. Jeez. And he still has to do all the responsibility of an intellectual and a professor and all of that, and he did that, right? So there's a certain charge you get in the little time you have in a day,
right?
And also probably the constant impinging painful reminder of your actual condition. You know, like Dr. House, right? Yeah. It's a show, but I think it really illustrates the situation here. It's like he's an asshole because he's in pain constantly, right? So now eventually he becomes that asshole, but it comes now. This is not to say that way or the other, to justify or not justify his claims. It just makes perfect sense to me that a person that has to deal with that on a regular basis would have both a delivery and also the ideas that he's going to play with are going to be way more radical because he
feels a time
radical.
pressure.
Not just that, he just physically feels the intense suffering that life can bring upon you.
Right.
And I think that people like us, I'm sure that, we go through our suffering, but I had a chronic condition for a while and then I didn't have it. So in the time that I didn't have it, I had a very different appreciation for what it must be like to live like this your whole life. Right. Like literally it robs you of everything, of a good mood. Everything is an uphill battle, everything. So I think that's how I see it. And the reason I'm comparing it to like Sam Harris, for example, is because you can see that everything about him, like his delivery, demeanor, language, he can be very feisty sometimes, but even that is always kind of couched in this like attitude that is much more measured and
restrained.
And there's not look at how often Jordan tears up.
Yeah.
Like, even on television. This is not an act. I mean, to the extent that I can, read him.
Sure.
But yeah, that's how I see those statements. But I take your point fully. Like even then, especially because he has such a vast experience as a clinical psychologist, to the extent that he can, I feel like he can choose to use a more, like you said, he's very eloquent, very smart, very knowledgeable.
Right.
So he has the choice to potentially also maybe change the rhetoric slightly in the ways that you're suggesting. And I don't necessarily disagree with that.
And again, it has less to do with Jordan Peterson himself and anything that he's saying. It's more the way that I just imagine somebody hearing that and taking it one way, and a different person hearing that and taking a totally different message, right? So,
but that's a slippery slope.
That is,
if you're gonna start like playing the game of like how people take it, that's already like that's very difficult.
But that's also the job if you're a public figure
that is true,
is to be able to package your ideas in a way that makes it harder and make it more likely that people take these ideas the way that you're wishing to package them.
I agree with that.
So the idea of like a good man is a very dangerous man, right? Well, what does that mean to be a very dangerous man? Let's look into that, right? Are you a very dangerous man if you can, bench 300 pounds and?
No, he means hurt other people or like lash out in a way that would show people like that you can't just mess with that person. I think it's more along those lines.
Sure.
Right?
So you're a very dangerous man if you are intellectually armed, right? That's one way to look at it, right? You can look at it a whole bunch of different ways, but you could look at it a way where it's like, well, I'm a dangerous man because I'm going to go buy, 1,000 pounds of fertilizer. And somehow that and again, so it's not necessarily fair because that already is a troubled individual, but they can hear that, and that can be the
Maybe they
seed
just
that,
like to roll around in it.
yeah, it could be,
sorry.
and it could tilt them to go in a different way, and it's coming from somebody that is held in such high regard, and you could see that being twisted, and so those are like edge cases that make it difficult to really like settle in on the critique of what I'm trying to get at. But like if you just twist it a little, deliver it a little bit differently, I think it makes it harder for that distortion to take place. And that's and like most of the time when I hear stuff that Jordan Peterson says, I'm like, yeah, that drives with me. I'm with that. So it's not like it's kind of like when you go and see a good movie, the things you talk about afterwards are like the two scenes that didn't work for you. Even though there's 40 scenes that were awesome, the two scenes that didn't work for you, that's the thing that ends up, so sometimes the thing that you critique is what you end up talking more about.
But I think it's absolutely valid.
Yep.
I think it's a valid like way of looking at it. I just sorry, go ahead.
No, but I was smiling earlier when you were saying doing the right thing. This is like 5 minutes ago, doing the right thing for the wrong reasons. That's a huge part of the Elephant in the Brain book, where they were talking about the motivations for philanthropy, and really ultimately what it could boil down to is that we just want to show off our status, and so this is why we do these good things, and like everything that we kind of do is for these selfish motives, one way or another, whether those are overlapping with overall kind of good social deeds or not so good social deeds, which is where people are less comfortable with that kind of selfishness. But like ultimately this is a huge part of our, deep motivations that we don't always talk about.
Because it's always how we appear, basically.
Right.
It's interesting because did you ever see this interview that, I always forget his name, the owner of TED Talks? So he interviewed Elon a couple of times. It was like this one that he did on stage and one that he did at the Gigafactory. And in it, Elon, which I'm sure he said it in other places, but it just happens to be the last one I saw him say that. He said, when asked, why don't you actively don't contribute more to like straight up philanthropy? Like, why don't you contribute more to like charity and things like that? He's like, it's very difficult to find a charity that actually does something that is productive. Yeah. Don't confuse the appearance of philanthropy and real philanthropy. Yeah. He said SpaceX and Tesla are the most philanthropic companies in the world because of what they're actually trying to bring to the world. Now, you can debate the truth of those claims, whatever you want, but that I think there's a lot of truth to the fact that a lot of those organizations, they are there to make us feel better because we don't know what to do.
Right.
So they give us an outlet to at least feel like we can sleep, soundly at night. Basically, that's the
effective altruism is the
yes. Yeah. That would be the exact that would be the exact term.
Yeah.
I think there's a guy that created a whole organization. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the name.
So he basically he was very young when he started it too.
Right.
No, that's the only thing I would say is that now the more I'm kind of talking with you through this thing, the more I realize that I think that maybe some of the reasons that he's also he was radicalized was how this particular journey started for him as this super known public intellectual, because he was just a professor, and that whole thing with the pronouns that happened originally.
Back to
Jordan. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that might have been because I think he really believes, and you know what? I'm not even sure that I disagree with that. I think he believes that this whole little phenomena of, the snowflakes and the safe spaces started there, and the pronouns and everything that's going on, including things that a lot of us are actually supporting, but we don't think about it like that. But a lot of that is the same phenomena. It's a phenomena that tries to just push out rationale and public discourse and conversation and hijack with an emotional monster that will have, it seems to me that that's what he believes. It might actually, if there will be an end to our civilization, it would start there. And I think that because he feels that that's the end game and those are the stakes, it might be why he doesn't take prisoners.
A little bit more.
He's a little bit more he wants to show that the force with which he's responding is merited.
Yep.
And if ever asked about that, then he would kind of extrapolate as to why.
Sure.
But anyways, I think we talked about Jordan enough. But I mean, look, we feel that, right? We feel that, you feel that in especially in LA, like in Hollywood, you feel that a lot. People are very, very sensitive and very careful with each other's emotions. And like, this is the place where you really feel this, both the good that care for other people can bring, but also the perversion that it can bring, where like all those ideas that have no connection to the real world all of a sudden take shape and become movements, and then it starts something that actually creates damage only because people don't want to look at what the actual information is, right?
Sure.
And then it makes it difficult for both sides to make any kind of. I think everything that happened with Trump, like, was a perfect example of that. It's like, I personally don't think Trump could have been elected if there wouldn't be this like crazy phenomenon on the left where half of the country would feel like it's, completely marginalized. Now, I happen to be on the left. I happen to be like, liberal through and through.
Yeah.
But I can totally see how you can't just tell people they're idiots all the time. You know what I mean? That's like
there's a couple, there are so many facets into how we got into a situation with the President Trump. A big chunk of it is that you can see that for the most part, you could say that the sort of mainstream media, whatever we want to refer to with that kind of phrase, tends to be more liberal, right? And so they didn't take him seriously. And so because of that, he could sneak in a way that, maybe a more seasoned politician with a more, broad track record couldn't get away with some of these things. And no one took him seriously until he already had enough momentum that there was no stopping him at that point. There's a lot of ground.
No,
to cover
I'm
with
not.
that.
For me, it's not even like I'm actually not big on politics in general. So for me, I'm definitely not trying to slide into like a political conversation. It's more a representation for me of how people feel, right? So it's like the political decisions that are made are super not interesting to me, because at the end of the day, I know. Which I'm sure now that you're on that show, you're probably it's like it's all about fucking. It's about fucking other people. It's like in all kinds of ways. It's not really about like how much of it do you believe is actually for the public good. Like maybe, and again, try and like look at it like okay, try and hear my question not through a political lens.
Gotcha.
Purely from like how the people under that power feel, like you and I. And people who are not on the coast, right? Because they're different people,
sure, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So maybe I can think of maybe Bernie Sanders,
sure,
that I can believe he really cares. How many other politicians you can point to them and say, hey, I think they really care?
It's a tough one because there's a couple different things I think going on, and I'll break it down into three categories. There's governance, which is what the government actually does, right? Those Social Security checks, those are, actual laws in the books that are being enforced, stuff like that. There's politics, which is the game that goes on between the politicians, right? And how they get around to making the rules. And then there's partisanship. And that's the theater, and that's the show that we all see.
But before you go on, I don't want to but this is super important.
Yeah.
But the partisanship shouldn't be the theater, though. It should be the two sides meeting, and the grind is supposed to produce something for the thing they're governing over, right?
Ideally.
But was it ever? Like, see, that's what I mean. Like,
No,
was it? Yeah.
I don't know if that's
Ever been the case?
No, I don't know if that's something you can get rid of, though. The partisan, the theater aspect of the kabuki nature of it. I feel like that's almost in a democracy necessary in order to give people something to connect to that they actually are interested in.
But you don't feel that that's more American? Like, I feel like in other countries it's not as pronounced.
Maybe it's more heightened here.
The theater aspect.
Right. Well, yeah. So like if you were to look at a different political structure, if it's, well, I don't even know if you can take it out.
I don't know. Like, I'm actually a big, like, I'm not very educated on the subject, but let's say England, for example.
Right.
They have a different system, right? The parliament and like, but they still have those collisions, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't feel like it's as theatrized, maybe because I'm following it even less, but it doesn't seem like they would lean in that. Like, Brits don't seem to care that much, like the people themselves.
The populace, hard to say one way or another, and there's probably a spectrum that maybe either of us aren't so familiar with because we're not there, right? But if you watch our Senate versus their House of Commons, that's a rowdy bunch. I don't know if you've ever actually like sat and watched like I think they call it something about questions. I wish I knew the term right now. Basically, you can say whatever you want to the prime minister as long as it's in the form of a question.
And you have a wig.
Yeah, so you can straight like insult him and then just put a like in Jeopardy form at the end, and it's okay, right?
See, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so they're like yelling, and like people are cheering along with something they agree with, or yelling down something they don't agree with. So there's a more of a theatrical element actually in the room, whereas we tend to have a much more subdued, except for on certain occasions, we have a much more subdued environment within. But when they go outside, they're lobbing mud at each other from their perspective corners, and the cable news that follows it that peddles all that, and that's what the people that are plugged into this world connect to is that part of it, right? And so in a way, it's that theater that connects people, because nobody really watches C-SPAN. Nobody really is like trying to get in, like who actually like downloads the PDF of the new law that they're thinking about passing and like leafs through it. No, we want to know about the fight. So to some degree, this is why I break it down this way, is because that partisanship, which I think you're probably with me on this, that you're not really a fan of that, and I find it.
Well, it just seems so irrelevant to the actual issues.
But there's for a lot of people, that's what they connect to, and that's what makes them feel connected to the government, either because they're with the party that's not in power and they want to fight back, or because they're with the party and they want to see their priorities being enacted, right? But they don't really get into the details.
So how would we ever get out of that? Just educate the public more, like in the long run. Long run.
I don't know that there is, and B, that there's necessarily a need, because like you could say, okay, you try a couple of different forms of governance. You have the older system where there's a king, and the king, whatever the king says, that's what we do, right? But even in those systems, because I was just thinking about this a second ago, even in those systems, there's some theater there, right? Like the king has a court, and everybody comes to see the king, ride up to the castle, whatever, 1,000 years ago, and there is a performance aspect to being the king, right?
I think most of it is.
Yeah, like the crown is as much for the people as it is for the king.
Because in the end, it can still be revolt.
Yeah.
Even though it will be way harder than it would be in a democracy, let's say.
Exactly right.
Actually, I'm not even sure anymore, because you have the American army, which is, I don't really think that, for all intention, actually, it's funny because we had this conversation, we're going to zigzag all over, it's going to be great. Yeah. We had this conversation the other night on, what's more inflammatory than politics? Weapons. Yeah. We're talking about that, and I said, and I would love if you can combat this thought, because I can't see like a way out of that. It's like, so first of all, I personally think that, yes, it should be way harder to get a weapon, period, right? It needs to be like a thing, like getting a pilot's license. It needs to be hard. You need to know what you're doing, right? But I don't think it can ever happen really, because of the way that the American culture is structured so much around this amendment. Mm-hmm. But also because I actually think that the idea to give the government some deterrence to think twice in certain situations, like if you're thinking about the extreme, like Nazi Germany, if anything else would fail, right, it would be way harder to do if people are armed, right? But then what I said is like, how much difference does all the weapons that people own in America actually make in comparison to what the army can do?
Right.
It's like, if they want to take over, they'll take over, no? Or I'm trying to find a way out here. Do you think that it's possible for, let's say the craziest happens, right?
Yeah.
And the American government just wants to impose whatever martial law, and it's something that nobody agrees with, and they go all in.
Yeah.
Do you think that people, even with automatic weapons in their homes, can do anything against the Navy SEALs or any real special units in the army? Is that even a deterrent of any kind?
No. 100%.
So
No,
at this point,
like-
at this point, it is like a king.
Yeah, no.
Is it?
Unless you had like some significant majority of Americans all on the same side,
Kind of like the Civil War kind of thing.
right? But usually a civil war is a little bit more balanced between competing factions within.
No, like a civil war
geographical
between
area.
the people that organize and the American army. Let's
Right.
say.
It would
Yeah.
have to be like a ground up revolt more than a civil war, just on like technical terms of like what a
How do you make the distinction?
well,
Sorry,
yeah. So the distinction between a civil war is like, for example, for the American Civil War, that was like on geographic grounds, right? So these states seceded.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And
Okay.
it was this group of people versus that group of people on a map,
got it. Okay.
right? Whereas a revolt is like the bottom up, everywhere topples over the hierarchy, the power structure, right? And so
Right.
at that point, it becomes numbers. In the scenarios that I think most people that are saying like I'm the give the motivation for adhering so strongly to the Second Amendment is that I want to be able to protect myself from tyranny. There's no weapon that you can kind of get legally in this country, even though you can get a lot of weapons legally that you couldn't get in other countries. There's no weapon that can really stand up against any number of aircraft
Or tanks, or yeah. Or,
exactly.
Yeah,
So the idea, because like I can relate to and connect to the idea of the heritage of overthrowing tyranny as the like American Revolutionary War, and as an American, you can kind of connect back to that time and think of George Washington and think of an American core of people believing in this idea that didn't even really exist yet, and coming together to throw off the yoke of the tyranny of a distant ruler that you didn't really feel connected to anymore. And that's a powerful ideal, I think, for a lot of Americans, right? But then you can't say that ideal is still valid today for today. You know what I mean? So
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I connect with that history of it, the tradition of it, but I can't justify it as a logistical reason behind still, suggesting that that's your justification. For
Yeah, no. Whenever I hear that argument, I'm like, even very rational people would make that argument. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Right.
They want to go in. They're
Right.
going in. That's the end of that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Even though I tend to be a more liberal person like you, I still have a hard time with the Second Amendment. I really do. I have a lot of back and forth about this for various reasons. That's one of them where like I have a hard time accepting a lot. I think what it is that the justifications that people give for why they want to continue to have the Second Amendment, I don't necessarily think of those as the valid reasons, but it doesn't mean that I personally want to get rid of the Second Amendment, if that makes sense. I just have to me, it's just a little bit more honest to say, well, like I don't own any weapons, but if I wanted to, as an American and the ideal of freedom, like if I wanted to, I could, right? But then it's funny to me because there are borders in this idea that people already accept. Like I don't think there's a lot of people that are on the guns right side that would say, well, I should be able to get a bazooka, or I should be able to get a tank, all right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's, and then
I'm
also,
sure some would, but
right? But like, the majority of people that are on that side would say, well, no, these are the things that are off limits and these are the things that are okay. But if you actually like look at the text of the Second Amendment, it's just, it's bare arms. So at some point we have to decide what that means by arms. And
no, but some of them are like very straight. Like, okay, so for example, the simple statement that it should be the bar for whom is like the license portion of it, right? To say that bullets are expensive, I don't think that's not an argument. It's like, okay, great, that's good. However, if I'm giving you a weapon to carry with you whenever you want,
Yep.
I need to make sure as a government that you know what you're doing.
Right.
To a much higher, so like you have to get a license to drive a car.
Right.
Again, planes way more difficult, so it's way more difficult to get a pilot's license,
yeah.
right? I wanted to say pilot's driver's license, which would be great. But like to say like who would resist that? I don't understand people who resist that. That makes no sense to me. Like why would you resist having a harder time getting a weapon? Just not in the sense of like the rigmarole you have to go through. It's just that you got to train. You got to go through a certain formal training of some sort.
Right.
Which right now is not the case, right? You can just kind of go and just
Depending on where you are, the rules are different, but some places you can just go to the store and pick one up. Right. I would say that if you're asking what these people feel versus what my opinion is, right? So I feel like these people feel that they're the people that see the government as a possible avenue for tyranny, and if that's your idea, then you don't want the government to administer the system. You don't want where the tyranny.
you don't
might
want the
possibly-
guy who you think is the problem being the middleman between you and the thing that
Exactly.
you might want to get.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's I can understand where that comes from. That's not saying that I agree with it, but I can at least understand
No,
that.
that actually
more
makes
than
perfect
the,
sense.
the
I didn't
idea
think of
I'm
that.
gonna shoot down a jet, right? But for me, what I kind of go back to the text of the Second Amendment.
Or you're the one that read it.
Yeah. No, a lot of people that are into this, like they actually can recite it, but there are a lot of people that can't say it. So let me see if I can say this. A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Legal definition, is that right? He's on his phone. He didn't see that.
No, I get this, but you guys are not tackling it the right way.
Oh, give us an angle.
You guys are not seeing it realistically. You guys are choosing, if you want to convince the other side, you should see what their arguments are.
That's what I was just talking about.
No, but what you guys are doing, like you're talking about
Straw man?
this overall federal government. You don't recognize that the states get to create their own gun right laws.
Oh, really?
It's very pretentious for someone in the city to tell someone in North Dakota what to do. The state of North Dakota should decide what their gun law should be than someone that's sitting in Los Angeles.
Right. Isn't that the case already?
No, well, yes, that's the case. But when people talk about gun rights, they make it overarching across the entire United States.
That is true.
Additionally, you guys are talking about a government, Navy SEALs. Well, what about a small town whose sheriff goes on the rampage? What about a small town that has 25 officers that are racist, and you're a minority and you want to protect yourself? Can that happen? It's not a Navy SEAL. It could be the police force that's going to try to knock down your arm. You're also talking about, when you talk about LA
This is great.
County, right? The people that want to own guns in LA County aren't the ones in Beverly Hills. They're the ones in South LA. They're the ones getting shot at.
I saw the biggest arsenal actually in Beverly Hills.
Yeah, because they're moving over.
No, this guy was from England.
I'm sorry, but
Fish, chips, and gun.
It's just.
Well, I'm actually seriously, I'm very excited about the podcast we're gonna do together when I can actually mic you, and because for viewers this must be like a nightmare to try and hear you. But this is a very good point. I don't think that necessarily we were forgetting that. I guess I'm asking. Actually, no. I think you're right. I think that when people have this argument, especially so passionately, they should recognize that it's a very big country and there's 50 states and every state has their own situation.
Right.
That is very different than what you might be experiencing every day.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good spot to start off with when you're having the conversation is trying to understand where other people are coming from.
That's outrageous.
Yeah, it's crazy. Stop that. So going back to the
It's not how we do things in this country, sir.
the text of the Second Amendment, the well-regulated militia part is the one that I find compelling and is often glazed over, and I don't have an answer about it, but I'm really curious as to how people perceive that in context of the debate over the Second Amendment.
Oh, just like militias organize themselves. That's acceptable, right?
Right, but why put the well-regulated part in front of that?
Oh, repeat the sentence again then?
A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state.
Well, I think that, I guess, yeah. So, like in the sense that they have some ties to an understanding of what the people they're protecting actually want,
Well,
or do they only act in their own, like in their own right, basically? Which it seems that most militias are.
Well, what's clear to me is that the sentence is so delicately constructed that there was a lot of thought put into why they put it that way, and people have gone back and seen earlier drafts and seen different things that they tried to pass before it actually, landed on this one way to phrase it, right? And so I think when it comes to a discussion, a broader discussion about the Second Amendment and not the sort of smaller sort of regional discussions.
The Instagram discussions.
Exactly. Is that to me what it means is that while a lot of times in America we like to talk about individual responsibility, what the words a well-regulated militia sort of bring up in me is this idea of collective responsibility. And we're not always so comfortable with that idea. And if you could have a way where rather than just any individual going to purchase guns, but like it almost had to be from within a group, not necessarily connected to the federal government or something like that, but almost like you had to go with a buddy, to get a gun. That to me kind of more fits into what I feel like the spirit of those three words are: a well-regulated militia, right? And we have this negative connotation to the word militia today because that sounds scary. Like, what are those guys? Let's be honest. It's usually guys.
Redneck crazy. That's the first association, right?
Yeah, that's a word people might use.
I said that.
Yeah.
It's fine.
But like the idea of what a militia means today versus what it maybe meant, in the 18th century when the country is trying to fight against the British, and we were relying not just on an organized army, but like.
Since when the Constitution were first created, they didn't trust each other. So New York hated New Jersey. New Jersey hated Vermont. They were afraid that if we created a unified United States, that the unified United States might attack one of the states. So they wanted to have their own militias, their own armies to protect themselves if the entire United States decided to attack New York.
That's the second phrase, though. The first phrase is the well-regulated militia.
Well, the well-regulated militia is ambiguous in terms of legalities. Many people think a well-regulated militia means that the state has the right to create their own rules regarding gun rights. But this is where there's an issue. Are you talking about the federal government creating an overarching gun right? Or are you talking about individual states creating their own gun rights? Because there's a divide there as well.
So first of all, to all the people who are listening and watching, we have a law professor here that actually schooled us here, and we accept with grace. But so his name is Daniel. You wanna say your last name, or?
It's fine.
That's fine. Okay. The debate that you see, let's say not the debates that are the really flimsy ones that we can ignore. The debates that you see that you think are made somewhat coherently, as far as you can say. Do you think that those are being done in terms of that distinction between the federal and the state, or do you feel everybody are ignoring that?
I think a lot of people don't recognize when you're talking about gun rights, are you talking at the state, the local level, or are you talking about the federal level? Because as I stated, a lot of people don't understand, I am against guns and things like that, and then you're talking about some place in North Dakota where 90% of the population use guns to hunt.
But they wanted federal, so they want to cancel it for them as well, basically.
They're watching the news, watching podcasts about people trying to take their gun rights, and they're like, I use my gun to go hunt caribou.
Yeah.
What are they talking about in LA? Right?
Right.
Like, and they want to take my gun rights from me? Right?
No, not this podcast though, because we have legal experts.
Well, I'm just stating that's an issue. Like, if you're going to talk about gun rights, you can talk about it within localities. You could talk about federal, right? But then you've got to be sensitive towards what restrictions you're going to be speaking about.
You know, they say that all ultimate truth must be simple. That is the simplest one point I've ever heard. And it should have been obvious, but I somehow it gets completely. Thank you for that, Daniel. Somehow it gets completely eliminated.
FYI, your conversation on Jordan Peterson was completely off.
Well, I can't.
Because you cannot talk about a quote from Jordan Peterson without looking at the context. And that's what 99% of podcasts do in error. Without looking at the context of this conversation, he made the rabbit. The first time Russell heard about Jordan Peterson was from me.
Okay. Wait, but I think I addressed the context to some extent.
No, you didn't. You said, I don't quite know what it is.
No. I said, listen, the context that I offered, I don't know if you heard or not, is that first of all, he was borrowing from Jung on that particular point. And the idea there is not that you should become a monster, but that you should recognize you already are one.
What was the quote before he said the monster quote, though? He talked about a rabbit.
Oh, specifically, which book was it in, by the way?
No, it's. I think it's in
a
talk.
speech.
I'm not 100% sure.
Sure.
But he talks about a rabbit and how he talks about virtuosity, and how virtuosity is a rabbit virtuous. In other words, well, a rabbit doesn't do anyone any harm, right? And then you got to define monster. What does he mean by? You can't talk about monster without defining what monster is.
Sure.
Is a monster someone who's violent, or is a monster someone who protects, who understands violence to protect others?
So actually, no, we were addressing some of those points, and obviously we have, because I know that we also have a limited time, I always have to kind of like think about what is the right point to kind of move on, because we're not trying to win a debate. But
I'm not trying to win a debate. I just think the context, you've got to really, if you're going to quote someone and talk about a quote, you've got to look at that entire context.
Sure, but I don't want to put Russell on the spot, because I asked him about that, and he doesn't.
But then it's not fair for the person you're quoting.
I think that's actually what I'm trying to address, though, because my point, again, going back to Jordan Peterson, wasn't about the quote from Jordan Peterson, but was from the people that hear it, right? And so that actually kind of is a little different from what you're talking about, because when I'm talking about the people that come across...
I recognize
right.
that, but the problem with that, because I thought about that, I said, well, he's talking about the rephrasing of it. So, and then I was like, but the problem with the rephrasing of it is you can't meet that standard. If you're in public giving a public speech, to hold someone to a standard where every single sentence that they state, and then they clarify it beforehand, and they clarify it after, like let's say the quote was, Bobby told me,
and then everything that says, you would then quote to that person,
right?
but it wasn't Bobby. Right.
Jordan said this.
Right.
No, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but the only thing that is relevant to that point, at least for this conversation, is because what Russell said, which is that he was responding more to what he felt that how people take it, to which I said, well, there's only so much you can do to try, you can express yourself as clearly as possible. At the end, you will always be misunderstood in some way.
Right.
Because it's all guesswork.
That's
Right.
So the audience then, honestly.
The what?
The audience should look at the totality of how that quote was taken.
Well, you're talking about like a purely...
I'm going to swap the battery on.
Oh, sure.
You can still say that, like, I can still offer a critique on a phrase, even if it's within or without context.
Or even from a limited perspective.
But they're going to say that you're taking it out of context.
That's fine. You can use that as a defense, but it doesn't necessarily.
It's not a defense. It's what they're gonna.
You can use that as a complaint, but it doesn't change the fact that, like, I still think those words are out of order, and you can add context to that, but I still think those words are out of order.
What words are out of order?
You should become a monster and then learn to control it.
But he says that.
That's what he says.
Yes.
And I say those words are out of order.
You should learn to control it, then become a monster.
You should learn discipline before strength, as opposed to strength before discipline.
Well,
this is the reason why we don't give cars to kids. They need to learn to discipline themselves.
No. So that's why for me, and this is where I kind of fall on like a third position, where I really think that it's more in the sense that recognizing that you're a monster. So, for example, do you accept that you? Yeah, we can just. So this was. I'm glad that we caught a lot of that. No.
I didn't hear that.
The what?
I didn't hear that statement the way you were phrasing it. Maybe
right.
That's on me though.
Yeah, no. There's a lot of things that we said that I feel that we're like talking about nuance, and I think for me again, it's the reason that it is in order is because it's because the Carl Jung point,
Yeah.
which is that we are those monsters
Yeah.
if we don't appropriate ourselves a certain way.
Right.
So it's not about becoming a monster; it's about recognizing. So if I'm misunderstanding that, that's a different story. But I don't think I am. I think it's directly from Carl Jung. Which the idea of are you familiar with the idea of the shadow, right? And
You were talking about it in previous conversations, but I haven't read any Carl Jung.
okay, so the idea, very broad strokes, is that the shadow is an integral part of the human psyche,
Sure.
and it's not something that you can ever eradicate. And in fact, if you ignore it, it becomes like that kid in class that is ignored, that eventually shows up and shoots everybody,
Right.
because it's being completely marginalized and isolated and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so essentially, you're treating portions of your psyche like you're treating an individual. And if you integrate the shadow, which also contains a lot of creative force, you are, and this is where I heard Alan once talking about Carl Jung, and he said that he called it the irreducible rascality, which is like the recognition that there is a component of rascal is a nice word, but there's a component of a criminal, a bad person, whatever it is that you want to throw at it, that exists in you now.
Right.
And most people who don't recognize that about themselves, that it's actually there, they are the most dangerous individuals because they're the ones that externalize it towards something else. Mm-hmm. And it's just an automatic thing that you do. And then you vilify other people. So like, you see this in play out in all the movements that are against things, mm-hmm. right? Now, there are certain things that you got to combat, right? It's a really good thing that, so, okay, this is actually a perfect example. So the entire gay liberation movement was an incredibly good thing, right? But notice that they were for gay rights, right? They weren't against the masculine.
Right.
They weren't against the white people.
Right.
So if BLM, for example, just to make that tiny switch, which is like, we are fighting for this. That's what we want to build, right? Versus let's destroy, right? That would give it a completely different tone. And it would also probably make it survive for way longer because it would be a thing that is actually moving towards a goal versus the impulse to destroy. The impulse is stronger than the idea. So if the impulse is to destroy, at all costs right now, because that's the monster that I see in front of me, which, by the way, is inside of you.
Yep.
And then you keep doing that. When the target is out, you still have the impulse.
Yep.
You're still trying to destroy. And it will keep unfolding in the world. And I think the deeper, the more nuanced idea here is that's essentially why recognizing that you're a monster first. Now, the thing that I said that I do agree with you is that I do think that there are other word formulations. Not switching in this particular case for me, but maybe saying capable of versus are.
Right.
I think I agree with that. Yeah.
I would imagine you are teaching someone how to fire a gun, just to fold all these ideas all onto each other, right? When you're teaching someone to fire a gun, you don't give them a loaded gun, right? So you don't give them the strength first. You give them an unloaded gun, and you teach them how to hold it, right? You teach them which way the bullet goes out. You have to be like very, very clear. Like, we're in the range. This thing gets pointed that way the whole time. You never point anything else. It's like a laser coming out, right? And you spend a lot of time with an empty weapon before you load it, so that they understand and that they are clear with it, right? Now, maybe that's not true for everyone. Maybe some people do it the other way. I'm just saying, for my personal philosophy, when it comes to dealing with things with power, you teach the discipline before you get the full power, right? Like, you don't get a car and with a 16-year-old and be like, okay, freeway's this way, let's go. No, you drive with them first, and you explain to them what I'm doing. I'm looking this way, I'm looking this way. We learn the laws and everything first, and then you drive around the parking lot. You know what I mean? And so it's a small critique on this idea. And in the end, like, that person that is driving the car, that person that's holding the weapon, they get that choice to say, well, I'm going to conduct myself in such a way as to be violent, or I'm not going to. But so by the end, they both of these ideas come to the same point. It's just the route that I take verbally to get to that point where you have the strength and the discipline. To me, the discipline leads the strength. Whereas when you take that, like, it's a weird critique, and it's not that I'm...
No, it's not weird.
Yeah.
What I'm thinking is that it doesn't fully run through. The reason I think that is because in this particular case, it's not like you're being given something. You are being told that you already have the gun and it's already shooting all the time.
Yeah.
And what you need to recognize is first that this is happening. That's why it doesn't work. The better example would be like a weird, I can't think of a Cyclope. Like from X-Men,
Yeah.
right? It's already happening.
Right.
You need to learn how to control that.
Right.
So the recognition has to be of the fact that it's happening. You're not being given a gun by that statement. The statement tells you, hey, you need to recognize that you're shooting at everybody right now.
Right.
That's how I see the...
So the reason why I would still put that same time frame even on Cyclops is that there was a point, like, he didn't come out of the womb with lasers coming out of his
No.
eyes.
So in this particular case, you are. So that's the difference. That is the difference.
Okay, so a little different.
So even when you're
yeah.
a little kid,
Yeah.
you're already pushing people, right? You're already doing that's the shadow.
Right.
Right.
And while that's there, though, you're being taught discipline, hopefully by the people around you before you.
But you're not being told why. It's not responsibility. It's you being told not to.
Sure.
And that's different.
And that can take a few different forms and be done a few different ways, right? So there's now we can get
No. I think we actually nailed it. That's the main difference.
But I think we're still moving in the same direction. But what I'm saying is that even as a kid, you aren't imbued with the strength that you will have as an adult. So the idea is
So what he's saying is that even when you're an adult, certain people still don't have that strength, and he's trying to give it to them.
right.
Yeah.
But hopefully you would want, even so as the adult, before they get that full strength, you would want to teach the discipline first. That's just my...
No, I hear you fully.
That's my ideal behind it.
I fully hear you. Like I'm hearing you 100%.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that what it seems to me that he means is that you don't have that privilege of right now you're at 60. Before you go to 100, learn how to control it. No, he's saying you are at 100.
Right.
There is no A60 here. It's just that the way that you're shooting in all directions is haphazard and is already wreaking havoc. And you just don't realize it. It's
Yep.
wreaking havoc on your loved ones. It's wreaking havoc on how you behave. It's contagious, so other people are doing it. So first recognize that you have this power that is at 100 all the time.
Right.
It's just that you are distributing the expression of that power in ways that you don't realize because you don't even realize you have that power.
So then let's back up to the part of the quote that we're talking about. You should be a monster and then learn to control it.
Is that the exact quote?
Like,
But I think it
90%.
matters. If he's saying become a monster, then everything I said falls by the sideways. So it's like
right. So I'm like 90% sure it's, and I go back and forth because sometimes I hear Joe Rogan in my head and sometimes I hear Jordan Peterson in my head. I'm like, which one am I actually?
no,
referring to?
wait. I mean, we'll obviously fact check
Yeah,
this and I'll
yeah.
put the correction. But this is
Yeah.
still fun to.
So my point would be that if it was what you were saying, then the quote should be, "You are a monster, and now you should learn to control it," which is still.
What I believe he was saying, like recognize that you're a monster.
And in that case, that would make more sense to me.
Yeah.
Right. But if it turns out that the quote is "you should be a monster and then learn to control it," that means there's still a should that you should pursue the monster part first, and then once you're
Yes.
at the monster part, then learn to control
I would
it.
say that if that is the exact quote, I would have to go back and read like much more and actually correct a lot of the stuff that I said. Like all my argument. If he says you should become, if the word
It's you
become
should
is in
be.
there,
It's not become. It's you should be.
okay. So
which is-
manifest as.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So okay. Well then that's I guess it really is in the quote. I just believe that in the end of the day, it's all about the attitude we believe we should appropriate in the world. And people who connect to certain attitudes, notice that a lot of times what the person is saying, I think most of the time, is really secondary. It's how they say the thing that resonates with people.
Sure.
And the people who feel that angst and pain that Jordan Peterson literally like carries himself as,
Yep.
they recognize that and they immediately connect to that. You know how they say like, you want to have a successful date, mimic the partner, right? They like that when people subconsciously, when they do what they do.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's going on more than anything. But I do believe that Jordan is kind of fighting this apocalyptic war. So that's what, you know what I mean? So that's why he's appropriating it this way. But I think that in the end of the day, the people who you interacted with, the people who got this idea and like ran with it to the extent that you felt that they are the people who connect to the attitude more than the things that he's saying. And those people, I would say, would find a reason to do the things that you think might be a little bit more on the wrong side of doing, because it might lead to some very unwanted outcomes. They would find a reason to do that either way.
Right.
That's really what it comes down to. That's why I personally connect more to the like Sam Harris attitude, because I'm trying to aspire to be more. It's not like by no stretch of the imagination that I managed to be that zen so often, but I aspire to be that more than being the neurotic self that I already am.
Sure.
You see what I mean? It's like I think it's really that.
But there are a lot of quotes that Jordan Peterson have that imbue that idea of like self-improvement and doing the things to make yourself better until you get to the point where you are better. Like I do hear a lot of good things from him that I'm like, yeah, I'm with that. It's just a couple little things.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I'm like,
And I'm 100% with you. There's a lot of like small quotes like that. Like for me, it's like, like the whole thing about get your shit together, right? Like he's very, very adamant about like getting it early on. But it feels to me like that really kills the drive for older people. Like what if people get their shit together later? Yes, it's harder, but it's possible.
Yeah.
And he makes it sound like it's impossible, right? So that, no. So I'm just giving an example of where I'm kind of like on your side of saying, hey, I think there's a better way of saying this.
Sure. And in the case where he's saying something like get your shit together, I feel like the video is taking place like in a college campus kind of thing, and he's talking to younger people. So that message is tailored to them in that moment. And so it makes more sense to me to say it in that way to the, based on the audience.
No, I think I actually followed him quite a bit, and I found that he says that in many occasions,
Sure.
and it's pretty much the same rhetoric because he's trying to keep it objective.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that in the end there's where this thing kind of like my capacity of interacting with it is that there's so much you can do to try and be clear.
Yeah.
People that want to misunderstand you will, no matter what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And it's in the end I see that a lot with even people who are really trying. I'm not even talking about like forget about like everything we talk about like politics and all that stuff. People are not even trying to understand. It's not about that. Yeah. But people who are really trying, and they just completely miss each other's points. And in the end of the day, is like, what are you doing this for?
Yeah.
Right. In that regard, it's almost like what Elon is doing is easier. It sounds like the most ridiculous thing to say, but only in the sense that he doesn't need justification outside of what the thing does at the end.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's like whatever. The proof is in the pudding. I don't need to explain anything to anyone. It does this, right? Now, obviously, it's more complicated than that. And yes, there's like a lot of, because of investors and things like that. But it's when you are leading a life of a public intellectual, and that's your entire career, right? Well, obviously his career was actually as a professor, so like for him it's a little bit different. But now, I would assume that the majority of what he does is the public speaking, right? So if your entire career is about being understood, even then, there's only so much you can do. And then like the interaction, like if we wouldn't be in the context of this conversation and me like knowing you so well and knowing who you are. If I would just hear somebody making the argument that you just made on Reddit, let's say, which is like I heard other people saying this and that's why it bothers me, I wouldn't even acknowledge that comment because there's nothing you can do. It's like if you're saying that 80% of the people that he listens to him, take it this way, okay, you have a point. Yeah. But if it's a few people, like I mean, what are you gonna do? There's nowhere you can go. That's why in that sense, it's like. It must be so difficult to be an individual who's chose, or I guess in this particular case, it chose him in some sense, but you fart in the wrong way. And like, no, think about this. Yeah, like, it's not like Joe Rogan who just sits there and has fun and can always say, hey, I'm just a comedian. Yeah. Outside of a couple of cases where it's just, that's not going to fly, right?
Yeah.
That's different. Here you literally are putting yourself, you're sticking your neck out so far, and so many people along the way trying to cut your neck that like this must be the most like it must be more exhausting and more stressful than even being a politician because you actually care about how people perceive you.
But at the same time, it's all of those little critiques that help to sharpen the ideas as you go through. So it's like you can't say
100%.
like I've gotten to the point, I've reached like A+ philosophy, and like all my ideas are unassailable. You know what I mean? Like this is the idea of having the idea, so that.
No, but I go back to if 80% would be espousing what he's saying in this way, like you said, then yeah. And actually, the perfect. I should probably think of other examples because it sounds like I'm becoming a one-trick pony. But like that example with Sam Harris and Majid Nawaz, you know that whole story.
Tell me.
So Majid Nawaz he was this radical, not jihad, but one step removed. That would be Islamist, right? And he was actually part of an organization in all over the world from Britain, but they were all over the world, and they were involved in creating coups, like overthrowing governments and things like that. So their only difference between them and jihadists is that they don't directly kill, but they definitely they are very radical. So they're like they are trying to overthrow governments, that whole thing. And he got caught and he was sent to prison in Egypt, and he served quite a bit, I think like 7 years. And then during the time he was in prison, he reformed himself. Like he read a few books, he met the right people, and he realized that what he's doing is kind of crazy, right? And he completely flipped. And then when he was released, he moved to England, and he started a foundation, an organization, and he became an activist from the other side, which is trying to what would be the word of like making less radical? Radicalize as many extreme Muslims as he possibly could through conversation and through and because he came from that world, he had kind of like an understanding of how to have this conversation. So that's the individual, right? Then he was debating Hayyan Hirsi Ali, who I don't know if you know who she is, but she's this woman in the Dutch parliament who escaped the Muslim world, and she's very much speaking against Islam and like everything that it represents on the radical side. And because she escaped that world and she became very highly educated, she went through like hell in her life. She went through, she had the genital mutilation and all that stuff, and she became a part of the Dutch parliament. Mm-hmm. And she was in a debate against Majid Nawaz, and the motion was, is Islam religion of peace? And Sam Harris happened to be in the audience because he's Hayyan Hirsi Ali's friend, right? And after the thing, there was an event, and they kind of started drinking and blah, blah, blah. And then when the cameras were off, Sam basically kind of yelled at Majid Nawaz. He said, well, now the cameras are off, because he was on the side of Islam is a religion of peace, but that's just the motion on the side, right? Because it's a formal debate. And he's like, well, now can you admit now at least that Islam is not a religion of peace? And then it started this whole thing. It almost got into actual swings.
After the...
Yeah. It actually got into almost violence, right? And years later, Sam Harris he was on this crusade of trying to have really, really difficult conversations with individuals he doesn't agree with. Yeah. And he reached out to Majid Nawaz and he tried to kind of talk, and it's like, hey, would you like to have a conversation on my podcast about what happened, about and they started talking, and they became best friends, and they wrote a book together that came at the thing together from a perspective of what Majid Nawaz was experiencing his whole life and how he came to be who he is, and Sam's perception of how the West misperceives what the real issues with Islam is. Yeah. And they wrote this very short book, forget the name of it right now, but this is one example where, here's a triumph of a real attempt at a conversation that was extremely difficult. Yeah. And I think that all we can aspire to is to try and have those conversations. And those conversations have to take place in such a way that both sides, not just trying to understand, but they signal to the other side that they're trying to understand. Yeah. And the thing that I think that is actually missing in most conversations is that component, because most people are not interested in getting at a truth, or they just want to express their frustration or to express their angst or whatever it is, right? And I think that especially online, that's being like amplified by so much because you don't have a face. You don't, especially on Reddit, right?
Anonymity, behavior and anonymity is totally different.
And then it's just like, right. So I always say that the only way that I see that this is becoming like less of a thing and actually resolved is when, you know, we get into a much, much later future where everything online also gains back a tactile feeling. Because if you can get punched in the face, you know what I mean? Even if it's online, there's a little bit, there's a little bit of a different thing here. Yeah. Or if you know that you're going to pay a certain price that is maybe equivalent to that. Yeah. Like it automatically will reduce certain objective points that you can't take back online that actually cost you something, right? So I think that the only way to get at that, but also honestly, I have to say that I think that certain individuals, and this is to kind of go back to like attitudes, that I think that it's, if you can sexify, if you can make it sexy to be a certain way, which is to be the individual who's trying to get at the truth and not just signal that you're trying to get at the truth. Like there's a big difference there, right? Yeah. I think if you make that more in fashion, like this being like, oh wow, this is like, I like this, right? I think that it's like like Tesla. It's like it's an amazingly beautiful car, so you buy it because it's beautiful, not because it's an electric car, right? Or whatever. Well, you don't like Teslas, whatever. Wait, no, that seemed to be like from the face that you were making. What?
I drive a Tesla.
Oh, okay. So why'd you make that face?
No, because I was like, well, no, it is a beautiful car, but it also was really fun to drive.
No. Oh, yeah. No. All the fun stuff.
Yeah. So I
thought the face you made, I'm like, okay.
No, I was like, and I was like adding more reasons for.
Oh, I have an amazing video of Kelsey freaking out in the back in the Tesla. It's amazing. She's like fucking slamming the thing. She's like, ah. Which one do you drive?
It's the Y. Yeah.
Oh, the Y. Okay. Yeah. Wait, is that the one that Tim drives?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm waiting for. I think we're gonna want to get the truck when it's possible for.
That is gonna be a monster of a vehicle, to use this word, but I'm very happy with the Y. I'll put it.
Oh no. I Tim took us on a ride. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's something else.
The Y is a lot of fun. Yeah. It's funny because he didn't know about the Roadster. And I was like, I said something. I was like, something about not like the Roadster. And he's like, what's the Roadster? I'm like, what do you mean? And then it's like, then we kind of start talking about it. And it's like, bro, what the fuck is that? Yeah. I'm like, yeah, that shit's insane. Yeah. Wait, is that true that they have, because I heard Elon speak about that, but I don't know if that was actually something that was actualized. Do you know if the new one that first of all, the new one came out already?
Which one?
The newest Roadster. Is it, or...
I don't know that any.
The one that he was talking about with the it's going to have the possibility of hopping.
The jets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that any production models have come off the line yet. I think you can just make reservations for it at this point. But
yeah. But that would be fucking insane. Just jumping over the fucking Grand Canyon or something.
Yeah, that car is going to be next level. But yeah.
That would be amazing, especially for fucking Mars and stuff. Yeah. Let me change page just a little bit. First of all, do we have a hard out?
I don't.
Just so I know.
There might be probably on this camera probably another 40 minutes or so, something like that.
Okay. All right. Maybe so I'll take that into account. Yeah. Cool. Now that you're... So first of all, there's the White House show, right? What is it called again?
Tyler Perry's The Oval.
Oh, okay. So it's part of the name.
Yeah.
Wow, he's amazing at marketing. Tyler Perry's. And the other one is a movie or a show? The one with the shorts.
It's a mini-series.
That's how I remember it. It's just so everybody understands, in the poster, Russell has very, very short shorts. It's amazing. Yeah. But I guess it's because that's how the shorts they used to wear in basketball back then, right?
It's time specific for late 70s, early 80s.
I actually thought it was a comedy because of that. It's very embarrassing.
Yeah, no. funny story, when we were filming it, in the context of the 70s, those shorts make sense. In the context of 2021, walking around like where all the trucks are and all the Teamsters, walking around in those shorts is a different experience altogether. But that one's called Candy. It's on Hulu. It's a miniseries, 5 episodes, and stars Jessica Biel. And I have a smaller part in that one. But that one's all true crime dramatization of a real event that happened in 1980. Yeah.
So is there anything else in the works that is coming up right now?
Hopefully more seasons of The Oval. I don't have any dates yet, but looking forward to finding out when we go back to work on that one. And then, working on some little things here and there. Hopefully some projects on the horizon. So I got some dreams.
I know you do. Yeah. One of the amazing things about watching you grow, because I've known you for what now, over a decade.
Something like that.
Yeah. And we actually met. We went to the same acting school.
Yeah.
Tony Barr's School of Acting, led by Eric Klein. Shout out to Eric. One of the things that is really, really pleasant to watch is that you have a certain way in which you do things, which is it seems like, I don't know if that's actually what's going on, but it always looks like it's very well formulated. It looks like you always kind of have this plan and you're moving in a steady pace. Like you don't really skip a beat. You in the time that you weren't booking those huge things, you actually took a very deep dive into the behind the camera side and production and understanding everything from, everything.
Yep.
And you worked with one of the best, actually, with David, right?
Mm-hmm. David Chung.
Yep. And by the way, I wanted to ask you that. It's just a tiny question, but do you feel that it actually contributes something, or would that actually detract something because you have such a deep understanding of what's going on around you?
I would say you're asking in terms of acting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I feel like there's a few different routes that people take when it comes to performance and acting. I think for some people, it's very much about the craft and the creativity. And for some people, it's much more about the technicality of it, right? And I think, I don't know enough about their specific modes of doing it, but I think of somebody like Tom Cruise as somebody on the technicality side. And that's not to say that he doesn't have a creative side, right? But when you hear about Tom Cruise and the way he works, like he's very involved in all the technical aspects of it, and he knows how to moderate his performance if the lens is on a 50 millimeter or on a 24 millimeter, and his mind is always partially in that world.
So he would literally change the way he does certain things depending on small things like the lens or something like that?
That's what I hear.
Okay.
I haven't had the
that's
opportunity to work with him, but those are the stories I hear about him. Yeah, yet. It's not a number yet. And then you have the world of method acting, right? So somebody like an Al Pacino. Now I haven't worked with him either yet, but the idea is that you're doing your performance and trying to forget that all of that stuff is there, and you're really living the world, right? And for me, and the way that my mind works, I found that I'm more connected to the technical side of it. And so I recognized that when I was going in for auditions, I was very preoccupied by what was going on with the camera. And I needed to understand that. I needed to sort of occupy my conscious brain with all of that stuff so that I could get to the performance aspect of it, knowing that I was doing the right thing technically. And I wasn't able to sort of throw away all of that stuff and just do what I needed to do in the moment and feel it. And, maybe somebody from the more method side of acting might have a certain judgment about that, but I feel like everyone just kind of has their own path for how they get to their performance.
Wait, so that actually helped you? The fact that you occupied a portion of your mind with that technical stuff?
Yeah, so for me, the more the more I understood of what was going on, why the camera was where it was at, why it was moving, and why I needed to stand here because that light is hitting me this way. And if I stand over here, then I'm in shadow and you're not going to be able to see me, or they're going to look back over there where all the C-stands are or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I needed to already have all those questions answered ahead of time so that when I came into my scene, then I can throw all those questions away, and that allowed me to focus on what I'm doing, right? Whereas for other people, learning all that stuff will just add more questions to them. You know what I mean? And so for me, I don't have a judgment over, one way or the other. I just looked at it as what works for me. And it actually helped me out quite a bit because those technical things are what helped me to feel comfortable in the way that they shoot the show for Tyler Perry, because there's so much stuff going on that I know I would get distracted by all that stuff if I didn't understand what was going on. So for me, I look back at the way I've sort of built my base of knowledge and the way I trained myself in different aspects, that it actually led me to this point where if I didn't have all that knowledge, I would have failed had I been given this opportunity. Even though I could go back to myself, 15 years ago and be like, man, I wish I had that opportunity then. I look back now and say, man, I really needed that, and that bit of information to even be able to survive in this current opportunity. So like what you're talking about, you said you saw me as someone that had a plan, even though maybe a long time ago I didn't see that plan. I knew that I had to keep working and learning these things. And when I would do something and maybe not succeed in the way I wanted to, say, well, what, in that failure, which is an important word for me, in that failure, there's always that seed of learning and for your future success, right? And so you have to, at that point, be honest with yourself about why you failed and why you didn't do what you wanted to do, so that you could then properly take that lesson and internalize it and overcome it.
Right. So yes.
Yes. Short answer.
No.
Well, for example, in the beginning of my acting career, I would get sides for an audition, and I'd get so frustrated because this audition's tomorrow. Why didn't they give me the sides last week? I need all this time to learn the lines and get it good, right? And when that kept happening to me, and I wouldn't be able to perform in the audition, I would say, well, what's going on here? I'm like, well, I'm getting hung up on learning the lines. And so back in Eric's class, I started systematically not looking at my script when I would get it a week in advance. We'd get our scripts on Monday, and the next Monday we'd put it up on stage, right? And so I'm like, well, I'm not going to look at it until Friday.
So you mimic the real world situation.
I did, but systematically I would, for a month I would do it Friday, and then, okay, I'm going to move to Saturday. Okay, now I'm going to move to Sunday. Now I'm going to wait till Monday. I'm not going to look at the script until Monday. I know Eric would probably be really upset. but I got to the point
He's throwing some papers in the air right.
I got to the point where I would start to learn my lines the night we got them, and I could put that scene up, at least be, mostly off book within 45 minutes. And then turn around when I get the audition for the Oval. I get the audition, I get the size at 7 p.m. and they want it back by noon, and I give it back to them at 11 p.m. And I get the call back, I do the same thing. And that's what I feel, even though I don't have the information on the inside. I imagine that they saw that the turnaround was very fast, because they know that when they're going into production, we're doing a lot of pages a day. And if you need 2 weeks with the material before you can get off book, then there's
it's got to cut into production.
Yeah, that doesn't really work in this world, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, I look at that process, and even though I didn't know why I was doing it then, now it makes sense. And I'm like, yeah, I was training for specifically a job on one of these Tyler Perry shows where we do move fast, and it, to me, it all kind of came together in that way. And I'm like, wow, I was really working toward this. And
was there any indicator in those tasks that felt like this is the right thing to do, or you feel it's like in the elephant in the mind, what is it?
Brain.
The brain, elephant in the brain. It's more like a back propagation, like a rationalization that you're making after.
The way I'm describing it now is definitely backfilling it with.
No, but do you feel that back then,
behind.
like if like, I think there's a certain extent there's a certain degree to which we can trust our mind,
right?
Within the framework of whatever this is, right? So I think in that regard, sometimes we can look back at a moment in time and sometimes know that, yeah, there was some component there that I kind of, it's hard to know, but that's what I'm asking. Was there like a moment back then that you were like, I could have done other things, but that felt like, I don't know, either because it was with this person and it felt right, or just that task was like filling out a need to learn that I had.
Yep.
There was some component of truth to it, basically.
I would say there were two things that were going on. One of them was being honest with myself, and it was making the switch from saying they're doing something wrong to me by giving me this script the day before the audition to I need to learn how to learn my material faster. So that was like the personal responsibility aspect of it. The second is a little bit harder to define. I think in the acting world, there's a particular challenge, and it kind of reminds me in a way to football. I played football a lot, so a lot of things remind me of football. If you want to get better at basketball, you can kind of just by yourself go out and shoot free throws, 3-point line, layups, and you can really drill yourself on the basics, right? When it comes to football, it's very hard to work on your skill sets alone. You kind of have to do it in the context of at least having one other person to throw the ball to. You know what I mean? There's very little that you can kind of do. You can kind of work footwork or do it, but it's almost like you need a group in order to get better at something. And for me, acting is kind of the same way, where it's like you can only do so much on your own to kind of build up your strength. But you kind of need to be with people and work that aspect of it. And so I found myself getting frustrated where I would get in situations where I wasn't doing anything because I felt like I needed to have, I'll figure it out once I get booked on the job, and then I can start to figure it out, I'll be with the group. And so what I started doing once I made that switch to make it about the personal responsibility is that I started looking for ways, like what are the little drills that I can do that maybe they're not, as good as doing things as a group, because that was my excuse that I was giving myself. And what are the little things that I can do to better myself individually that I can then, hopefully carry those over when the opportunity presents itself. And so it was those little things of like learning how to, learn lines quickly. It was learning about camera and lighting and lenses and all that stuff that gave me a sense of familiarity and knowledge about what was going on, so that when I was in the situations where I was in the group, I had this sort of body of knowledge that I could apply to it. So those were the two things that I kind of used to get to that point.
Do you feel that on a higher level, if you have to choose one or the other, do you feel you enjoy acting more or more on the side of like the creative, like the conductor, like the director or somebody who actually writes the material and
Gotcha.
produces the material?
Yeah, I think that when I look at the careers of other people, I think the ones that I kind of always get most jealous of are the ones that do a lot of different things. So somebody like Issa Rae, who was Issa Rae was the filmmaker that did HBO's Insecure. She's the writer, she's the producer, she's the director, and she's the star of the show. And I look at somebody like that, I'm like, man, that's the kind of career that I want to have.
Like an auteur, but also does all the acting in front of the camera, like everything from A to Z.
Yeah, so I always have a difficult time answering this question. I will.
Oh no, I think you answered it. That you aspire to be good at that, which is being able to take it from A to Z.
Yeah.
And play all the roles if needed to the best of your ability. Would that be a fair summation?
It's close. I'll say this: when it's not that I have to do all of those at any particular job. There are people that do that and do a great job at it. It's that I find fulfillment in doing all of those things. For me, what I enjoy is just being part of the tradition of storytelling through filmmaking. And so whether that is as an actor, whether that is as a camera operator, whether that's just, doing the data downloads at the end of the day, all of that.
I actually love those. I don't know what it says about me, but
It's kind of fun. You got your little laptop.
it's just you got to make sure it's all correct.
Stay organized and lines and dot and margins and this and that
Yeah.
So all that stuff to me is rewarding, and so if I never did another acting job, but I was still working at camera, that would make me happy. Maybe not the manager so much, but I would still find joy in that, and I would still find time on the side to sort of find little ways that maybe I could get back into the acting part of it. But then at the same time, if I was acting for the rest of my life and I never was a camera operator again, I wouldn't feel like I was missing out on something, you know. So I just really, for me, I find storytelling such an important aspect of the human experience that I feel honored to be a part of that tradition. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, that's. I think that attitude is the healthiest one to take in any domain. Really, is that it sounds so cliche, but I mean, think about it. Like functionally, that's the most true thing you can adopt as an attitude, which is like love the thing, try and absorb as much of it as possible. So one of my guests, Lucas, he is this incredible performer, guitar player, singer, and he says that whenever he doesn't work on his music, he works on the pedals or the setup or whatever. But so he still works on his music because he's a really good mechanical engineer. He's very smart. Like he does a lot of things, but they all involve music somehow. So he always works on that in any aspect. And I feel that that's actually not different. It's just that I feel that because there's always this school of thought that like if you don't focus on one thing, you can ever do it as well. But then Elon comes along and disrupts 5 industries. Yeah. So I don't know, man. But then again, not everybody can be like it's kind of mesmerizing to watch people on that level. And the woman that you mentioned, what's her name again? The woman who does all the things that
Issa Rae.
Yes. It's always amazing because again, you do get this limited attention, and you do have to actually be pretty proficient in all those things to do all of them together well.
Right.
But I think when you get to if you do invest yourself in this way, and you get to this point where those things start converging, and you start having this like bird eye view of the whole thing unfolding, and you start understanding the level of freedom, of creative freedom you gain from that is something that I think can't be matched with just doing one thing. I'm not knocking down doing one thing. I'm just saying that as far as storytelling.
Yeah.
Because then the storytelling is not bound by what you can express in that moment. It opens up into all those dimensions of expression in which you can create the story, tweak the story, express the story, involve people to tell the story better. What kind of people? Like you would have all those understandings in real time, and it just a much greater freedom. And I feel like because everything, and especially in the film world, became so much more accessible and cheaper.
Sure.
You have the possibility. Like 15, 20 years ago, actually creating a film like that looks like really good will be, maybe 20 years ago, no, but like maybe 30, 40 years, it would be almost impossible.
Right.
Because you would need the funding. You would need the studio. You would need the whatever. But now, like it moves more and more towards the individual.
The barrier for entry has come down.
Exactly.
For sure. Yeah.
And then it just depends on whether or not you're willing to actually put in the work.
Right.
There's certain things that, again, like law, like being doctors, like being a physicist, there's certain things that just the level of minimal understanding you must have to even approach the subject matter is so enormous that, at least for now, there's no really other way around it. But in many domains, you can be, along all those steps, you can contribute quite a bit just by the willingness of being open-minded and creative and just actually putting like your entire soul into whatever it is that you happen to be learning or doing in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also something to be said though for specialization. I think you're also not, saying specialization is bad.
No, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying that to me, let me clarify. To me, the way it appears to me is that I would, like you, rather be able to kind of tie this knot onto, like seeing the entire machinery operating. It's just that, what I'm resisting is the statement, you can't possibly get as good
Right.
at all those things together. I think it's just a matter of commitment.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying with that. And on one hand, I do have a bit of me that is like, oh, I wish I could specialize in that way.
And which one would you specialize in?
I don't know.
So you can't.
Yeah, so
that's
really,
exactly why you can't.
it could just be a way that I'm backfilling my indecision with logic and be like, no, I just love all of it, but really I can't decide which one I would rather do. Hard to say. If I'm being honest.
That's the humility in you. Yeah. No, I think in the end of the day, it's. I think the human mind is capable of absorbing, almost infinite amount of information. That if you do it long enough, it just becomes part of the back function, and then you can focus on the creative side in however many things you absorbed till that moment, basically.
But
you wouldn't have the same experience if you wouldn't know that well all those things. Like you wouldn't be focusing on the camera and all that stuff because you wouldn't be able to.
But there is a like a mental decay that takes place though when you're swapping roles that I've noticed.
But in the task switching, you mean?
Right.
Okay.
And so like if you are doing like going back to like a physical workout thing, if you're doing like curls all the time and then you switch to doing like bench press, when you come back to doing curls again, it takes a while to build that strength back up, right? And so in the same way, like I was working on a movie last summer as an actor, and the cinematographer says, "I'll take camera," and the camera was kind of sitting on the ground next to me, and he was about to go, handheld over the shoulder. And my like instinct was to like jump and get on the camera. I'm like, oh wait, that's not my job right now. And I had to like refocus, like, no, I'm just here to do this part, right? But then when I'm working as an actor for a long time, and when you're working as an actor, you kind of like sit off to the side and you wait for someone to come and get you and tell you what to do.
Right.
And then I go like I went from one job as an actor and then jumped on to doing camera crew. And I remember like my first day on set doing camera crew, and I was just kind of standing there, and I'm like, okay, I'll get breakfast. And I was like, oh wait, I got things to do. Like I need to, and I had to like switch my brain into like crew mode, and like, no one's not gonna, no one's gonna tell me do this. I need to go do these things and be on top of it so that when they say we need this, it's there.
But that's because you're not doing it on a regular basis.
Well, because you can't do either on a regular basis.
No, but you're saying I'm going to remember her name eventually. What's her name again?
Issa Rae.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you spell that?
Issarae.
Issa Rae. Okay, now I remember. Yeah. So Issa Rae, is she doing all of them in the same breath, like in the same project?
I mean, she's definitely writing
the
show, which takes place, before the show's in production. So she's involved with all that aspect, and that's pre-production. That's part of the director's job.
But she's doing all of those things like on a regular basis, back to back, right?
I imagine. Like,
I would assume that then that becomes the task,
right?
All of it.
It's just to learn how to do all of those things
exactly.
At once,
it's just that the workflow involves all of those things,
right? Yeah.
So I think that's what it's just. If you just focus on one thing long enough, even if it's a pretty short period, probably,
right?
Then you have this task switching problem, basically.
Right.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. What you said? You said you're also working on something that you're creating right now, or no? This is just kind of like.
Oh, I got some dreams on the horizon. Okay. I'll put it that way.
All right, cool. Well, I guess super secret. We don't talk about that.
Well, if sometimes if you talk about goals, sometimes then that sets off the biochemistry in your brain that you've already completed the goals, and then you'll lose some of the motivation.
To me, it's the absolute opposite. If I said it's happening.
It needs to
even
happen.
if I didn't necessarily. That's why I would sometimes tell people.
Yeah.
Only because I know that if I go back on that, I can't live with myself. I have to I can't sleep.
Yeah.
So I would have to someone complete it. And I actually looked at that, and it's really weird. You know how you said that you didn't necessarily know that you had a plan, but then all of a sudden now you look back, you're like, oh, that makes sense.
Right.
Sometimes I would notice that the thing that I said by passing to someone, all of a sudden years later, literally happened exactly how I said it. And I was like, whoa, I wasn't even thinking about that. And then it happened exactly like that. It's almost like, I think if there's any truth to like manifesting, this will be it. It's like you plant an idea that is strong enough to kind of guide your behavior, even when you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just that you really want, like for that reason or another, you want the the completion to happen.
Yeah.
Either because it's, other people will criticize you, or I don't know, or just like that's how you're wired. But I see what you're saying. Sometimes you say the thing and then it's like, oh yeah, okay, so I guess it's done.
Yeah.
It's like when you really have to shit and then you see the toilet and then it goes. It never happened to me. I just heard people talk about it. So I'm just referring the information forward. So because I think, how long do we have?
Maybe another 10, 15. It's
10.
actually the camera battery and not the,
okay.
the screen battery.
So this is the camera battery? So we have...
No, those are the screen batteries. It's going to be up on the screen.
Okay, so about 10 minutes
Maybe.
on the safe side. Maybe I can swap cameras later. Okay. Then in about 3 minutes, I'll start kind of wrapping up. Personal question.
Sure.
Kids. You want them?
I actually just had this conversation with my uncle last weekend. I'll put it this way. A few years ago, I think the idea of having kids would have been scary for a couple reasons, but as an actor, it's almost like a selfish choice in a way to continue to pursue it. If it's not having a lot of returns, and it's like hard to handle your finances, and you're like, okay, I got to bartend, I got to do these other things to keep the ball rolling, as it were. And so the idea of like introducing a kid into that was more scary than I was really willing to jump into, because then I would say, well, is it really worth pursuing this, or do I have to do something that's a more stable option because I'm responsible for this person now? In the last year or so, that equation has changed. There's still some reservations, because it's like, well, how long does this job last? And then what's my life look like after that? And will I get more work and all that? But at least for the moment, that equation is different, right? And so that fear is less prominent. I think my whole life, I love the idea of having kids, having a family, having little ones. That sounds fun to me, and I think I would enjoy being a dad. So it's definitely something I would want to do. It's just a question of being responsible, and I would feel like I was being really selfish if I didn't have some kind of success to make it worthwhile to continue to pursue acting, continue to pursue storytelling through film and television. If I was struggling and then trying to have a kid in that situation, and that everyone kind of prioritizes those questions differently, and it's like, well, what my uncle was kind of telling me, and he's a wise man, and I accept his opinion. I know mine is probably not the strongest, but I gotta do what's right for me. Is that you're kind of never going to be ready to have kids, and you just kind of have to do it.
That's what my sister told me.
Yeah.
The exact same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, what do I know, because I don't have kids?
Yeah.
But it seems to me like that's not necessarily fully true. Like, I feel like you can get to a stage in which you're financially so secure, and how you can pull it off, and you're like, yeah, I'm scared a little, but like, let's try. Like, let's actively try and have a child. Like, I think you can get to that place.
Right.
But yeah, I can totally see what they mean. Is like, maybe emotionally you're not always fully ready. And also I feel like when you have the child, it's like you got to be a complete psychopath to then not have like this like extra fire under your ass to, no matter what, you're going to make it happen.
Right.
But you're saying that might have actually, that fear might have actually pushed you to maybe pick something that's a little bit more stable and less, and that was the main fear, right?
Yeah, like I maybe say I was working at a restaurant at the time. Maybe I say, okay, well, I'm going to stop pursuing, and it's prioritization of resources, and so maybe I stop putting resources into film and television and say, okay, well, I'm going to be a general manager at this restaurant, and take something that had a more stable outlook, and I would have been fine doing that, and I think that could be a good job. It's not an easy job by any means, and you can definitely make a living doing that, and I would have been happy and had kids and done that whole thing. It's just until that was a bridge I was crossing, I didn't have to make that decision. And so it could have just been, well, maybe I delay that decision until something happens for me. And now that it has, I'm like, well,
What's my excuse now?
yeah, well, but also it's like, it's not as risky anymore. Or, maybe if there was no timeline for when that was going to happen, then I keep kicking the can down the road kind of thing, And so it could just be justifying that kicking process by saying, "Oh, now I've done it." But it was always risky, and there was never a promise that I would have that success.
I thought about it a lot recently. I just feel like, and this is where I might actually get a lot of hate from the left, but because it's a weirdly, seemingly more conservative idea on the surface, and I don't really know where it comes from, to be honest. But all of a sudden something hit me. And it might just be genetic. Like it might be that genetically we're predisposed to have certain types of feelings at a certain age. Yeah. It's just because that kind of drives the evolutionary pressure, right? But I feel like there's something about having children that completes you as a human being. Like there's a component there. Now, this is by no means to say that, whoever doesn't have children is not a complete human being. Is that there's a certain experience in having a kid that because it's a life of somebody else, because it's like, think about how surreal it is. It's like it's like literally like it's not like a thing you borrowed or like it's kind of like a full life thing. Yeah. And there's something about that, the interaction, and also plus the component that you vicariously relive your own younger years through the eyes of what you see they're going through, which there's some components that I'm sure that never go away because they're just human. Yeah. And then there's all the, the more modern things. So it's like there's a version of that, but now you can see what your version of that was. And there's something about that. It's almost like you're recapitulating. You know how your life flashes in front of you before you die? So it's almost like a slow version. But yeah. Yeah, it's like, you know how it happens? Yeah. So it's like a slow version of that. Yeah. It's like you see this unfolding for somebody else, and then you kind of look at it through that, and then the quick thing happens. Yeah. But it's just that I feel like that is something that I would want. And then I thought, wait a second, but that's a very selfish reason to have a kid, right? That's not a reason to have a kid. But then I was like, no, I think that I feel like I'm ripe to impart something that I think is of value. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the only ready that I was ever looking for. Sure. So it's like, as long as I feel like I can actually, I didn't feel like that always. I felt like for a long time, I felt like, no, I don't really have a value that I think that I've distilled something that is of real value that can move on, pass on safely. Yeah, that I feel like that would actually make the world better. But now I feel like it's a little more than that. That's why I'm asking, because it's interesting. Because we're probably, how old are you now?
42.
Oh, that's really? Yeah. That's a perfect age. 42 follows me everywhere, man. Hitchhiker's Guide right there, right behind you. Yeah. So I have a little bit more. I'm like 3 years behind you. Okay. But yeah. It's definitely coming.
In which direction though?
Well, I'm definitely getting younger, as you can see. The gray on my beard tells you the thing. If this is, this would be such a fun subject. We got to wrap up. Well, let's see. Let's do like a flash round. Would you? What age would you want to go to if and when we can flip, like growing younger?
Do I get to keep my knowledge?
Yeah, wisdom. Yeah.
Oh, just body. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 22.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
For some reason, I keep landing on 27.
No, 22. I was playing football. I was in the best shape of my life. I was carved out as.
I was way too horny, man.
Well,
I mean, that comes with the body. Yeah. I had no control. Like, you keep the wisdom, but I don't know to what extent that would. Well, see, this is the real. This is going to be the real test if the wisdom actually can overpower that shit. Because we think we get wiser, we just get slower. Yeah. We just we don't have the same drive. That's all. I think the genes will overpower that shit. Like, there's no tomorrow. There's not going to be a problem for it. Yeah. Where do you land? What age do you think you would want to land on, Daniel? If you could grow younger. Somebody said 9. It was very bizarre.
27.
See? Thank you. Yeah, 27. Okay. You already kind of know what's up. Like, you start understanding. I feel like it's a body thing. Like, your body starts. You still have the drive, but less of the confusion.
Sure. Okay.
22, I was like, well, maybe you were a different person, man. You seem to be pretty measured. He was like,
I just remember what my body felt like when I was playing football at UCLA versus what it feels like when I go on my jog this morning. And I'm like, I'll take 22 any day. It's like, it's just night and day difference.
yeah, it's like, well, yeah. But
Yeah.
that is a good point.
Yeah.
If I can get over the horny, maybe 22, 23 would also be, would be that for me as well.
27, I already had like aches and pains. You know,
But that's
like,
because of how much you abused yourself.
Probably,
but if
yeah.
you eliminate that out of the picture.
So then we're kind of like changing the.
No,
the
like if
specifics
you're
of the
growing
detail.
younger, that means your tissue is growing younger. Right? Like ligaments, and I would assume that by that point you can actually like change some things pretty easily. Like you don't have to you can print a body part that.
So just to clarify, we're doing
Perfect condition, that age.
right, but are you taking the body from 22, or are we saying you can turn the clock back to 22
Both.
by these? Because they're like that's a little slightly different.
They are different, but I'm
Scenarios,
talking
yeah.
about both. Because it seems like actually that guy that you also said you follow, Sinclair, David Sinclair,
Okay.
the guy who was talking about aging.
Yeah.
So he's the kind of like one of the world leading experts, right?
Yeah.
He's the one that I don't know if the one that advertises NMN more than anyone, or he actually came up with. I don't know, but like, which by the way, I have a friend who's Have you heard of this? NMN is it called? Yeah, I think it's NMN, not M&M. It's NMN.
The rapper?
Yeah. It's a supplement that you take, and apparently it's one of those things that it seems to actually be doing this weird actual slowing down of aging. You got to take it every day, and like he's one of the biggest proponents of it. But if you haven't heard of it, you should look into it. It's just like I was looking into it, and then it was like, okay, now we're about to go on like a world trip, and it just looked a little bit too expensive. But I was like, it's not that crazy though.
Yeah.
But if you would, so he's saying that, we eliminated about 4 of the reasons out of like 6 or 7, the main ones that we grow old. But the main one is going to be the gene thing, which he was talking about, right?
Yeah.
So if you can isolate that gene, and if you can reverse the function of that gene, you can just grow younger.
Yeah.
Now, I'm trying to imagine what would happen to current injuries. Like if you have a problem in your ACL or something, even if it's going to get younger, I don't think it's going to fix itself. So you're going to have to replace that. So there's got to be some like combination of those things.
Right.
But what I'm asking is perfect condition, that age, because that also kind of answers a lot of the people's concern about like living for longer. Like they're like, I don't want to feel like 90 for 500 years.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you're going to be like 27, but I don't want to be 22 and horny for 500 years. I couldn't fucking make like a one well-formulated decision at that age just simply because of that.
Yeah.
I think I would just like pick a different career every 100 years.
Gotcha.
That would be a fun one.
Yeah.
What do you feel like? Would you do that, or you keep going like in the same field?
I would imagine I would just stick in the same field.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, what can you learn in the film industry in 1,000 years, man?
Yeah.
Fuck. All right. Well,
But, I mean, to be fair, I can watch the same TV show over and over and over and over again. I study it. I learn. I see new things. So, like for me, the repetition is what I enjoy.
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I would actually love to explore that next time we talk, because I'm very much the same way. Both like I actually don't watch anything anymore, and it's not some kind of a political statement. I just don't find myself doing that. But movies that I really like, I would rewatch them. Like this book that I was asking you about, right? I think I consumed it like 20 different times.
Wow.
It's like just because I saw something there that really like I was like, holy shit, like this is like a manuscript for the 21st century, like straight up, like in all respects. And every time I go through it, it's like there's a new thing. But like for example, Kelsey, my partner, she's like, she watches a movie and then she forgets who the characters were. She can't remember shit. Which, by the way, you asked me about Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes.
That's the first film in her life. That first of all, she laughed, she cried,
Wow.
and she remembered almost every moment of it. She was like, "Holy shit!"
It's a different level.
That is a different level.
Yeah.
By the way, the chubby security guard, the one in the fight scene in the beginning, Narayan, is a good friend.
Really?
I didn't know he was in the movie.
Oh,
it was.
that's
I told you, a friend of ours called us like 40 minutes before. He's like, "Come watch the most important movie of our time," and immediately I rolled my eyes.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jesus. And he goes, "Or I lost $50." I'm like, "Oh, you motherfucker." Okay, fine. So we go. And I'm so happy he did that.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about the film. And all of a sudden I seen him around and I was like, holy shit, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Russell, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you,
This
brother.
was such a pleasure, and
Likewise.
you're such a great person to talk to in general, and also you're always an inspiration as far as like just determination, being there no matter what. Oh, there you go. See, I feel even Zena's saying hi. And I'm very glad that we finally get to do this, and I would love to do this again.
For sure.
And Daniel, seriously, if you feel like joining, I would gladly bring another mic, and we can have like a seriously, like this is gonna be so much fun.
We'll have to get like one topic though.
Oh
Be
hell
like,
yeah! Oh hell yeah!
Second
And
Amendment.
it's gonna be, you know how Joe Rogan does shows only about fights.
Yeah.
We're gonna do only about law,
Yeah.
a subject you and I know nothing about or
Yeah.
very little, and we're just gonna argue with an expert. This is gonna be a lot of fun.
That's the subtitle of the show.
With Amber Heard.
Amber Heard, Johnny Depp.
Oh, fuck yeah. Trouble.
By the way, oh fuck it, we gotta fucking probably wrap it up, right? Okay, but bro, this is something I would love to talk about because maybe even a little bit off camera, because a friend of mine is actually going through like a shitstorm right now, and it's basically impossible to win a defamation case, right? Most cases.
Very difficult to win defamation. Very difficult.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
fact that Johnny Depp won is...
It's like one in like.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I would love to break that. Yeah, because my friend is going through this in Canada, liberal Canada, where it's like impossible. A guy can't say anything. It's like the second a woman says something, and that's it. That's like God's word. So I would love to actually explore that. Thank you so much for doing this, brother.
Thank you.
I had
Appreciate the time.
an absolute blast, and we'll do this again. So actually, before we leave, so I would love to do this again before.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we weren't recording.